I'm Jason Pack, the founder of Eye on ISIS in Libya and the author of the recently released Atlantic Council report, The Origins and Evolution of ISIS in Libya. What we did in this report is we looked over tens of thousands of pages of Arabic and English documents, and we distilled them into a range of lessons about why ISIS was able to embed itself in Libya, how it was evicted militarily, and what we can learn about jihadi groups, not only in Libya, but elsewhere, based on the study of the evolution of ISIS in Libya. I was thinking it might be useful to distill 3 lessons from the fight against ISIS in Libya that could be applicable to the Levantine context. The first one I came up with is the West and our regional allies are not prepared for the day after. Unfortunately, trite but true, but it's real. 2 is that you need a political coalition undergirding a military anti-ISIS coalition. And 3, we need to take into account the inherent mutability of jihadi organizations as we combat them. So point number 1, preparing for the day after. You know, everyone criticizes George W. Bush or Obama that they intervened in places like Iraq and Libya, but they weren't prepared for the day after. And yet, the same mistake reiterates itself. We've done really well in our special forces and our bombing coordination with our Libyan allies. And in 2016, from May to December, it was American support and British and American special forces, which were instrumental in working with our allies, such as the Bunyan Marsus coalition of Misratan militias, who worked with the quote-unquote General National Accord government to help evict ISIS from Sirte. And that coordination was unprecedented and enormously successful. And yet, the West didn't work with Bunyan Marsus to, for example, think about how would they govern Sirte, or how would they turn the governance of Sirte over to the liberated populations. You know, pretty obvious stuff, and yet we were entirely unprepared. That leads to point 2. Part of the reason we were unprepared is there was no coalition of the political actors who were working together militarily to attack ISIS in Libya. And fortunately, and this is a main point that our research has shown, ISIS was deeply unpopular in Libya. Brutality had backfired. And the Libyan people were ready to get ISIS out of Derna, as they did in 2015-16, and then out of Sirte, as they did in late 2016. But one of the roles that the West could do is helping to stitch together a political coalition that undergirds this military willingness to defeat ISIS, because the enemy of my enemy is my friend, but when that shared enemy is gone, the coalition might evaporate. And we saw that with the Libyan revolution. Many different groups worked together to evict Gaddafi, but then they fought over the spoils when Gaddafi was ousted. This leads to point 3. When we're planning ahead, we need to realize that jihadi organizations are very mutable. So in Libya, when they were facing Gaddafi, they adapted to that reality. They got training in Afghanistan. They weaponized Islamism. Then, during the revolution, they dealt with the grievances and the nationalism of the 2011 period. And from 2014 onwards, ISIS was able to get a stronghold first in Derna and then in Sirte, because those populations were dying for governance in the vacuum and lack of sovereignty that is post-Gaddafi Libya. So when ISIS was evicted from its governance role in Sirte in December 2016, what do you know? The groups just mutated back to the cell-like, Al-Qaeda-like structure that had characterized them previously. We need to prepare for ISIS in the Levant, going back to being a cell-like, Al-Qaeda-like group, and its fighters leaving ISIS and just flowing into Jabhat Nusra and other Al-Qaeda-linked groups, because jihadi theology is mutable. Jihadis are loyal to their commanders, not to larger ideologies, and we need to grasp that mutability to have anti-jihadi strategies that will cut the problem off rather than just whack-a-mole. You know, you hit them in Sirte and they pop up in the southern Libyan desert, or you hit them in Raqqa and Mosul and then they pop up in Idlib. So lots of lessons to be learned from Libya that apply to Syria and Iraq. I hope you read our report, The Origins and Evolution of ISIS in Libya, that I worked on with Rhiannon Smith and Kareem Misran of the Atlantic Council. You can get it at the Atlantic Council website.